and Phoebe Dynevor. Hi.
Who needs a drink?
Who needs like 5 minutes just to sit in full silence? Because that's how I ended this movie. Just kind of sat there. I will start with you, Chloe. When the first time you kind of had the germ of this idea, was your way in and was the thought through Luke and examining kind of masculinity, toxic masculinity, that, or through Emily and wanting to tell a story about kind of like the push and pull of empowerment and sacrifice and the way that women, when they are big, also have to be small?
It definitely started with Emily, and just this feeling that a success doesn't feel like a win. It could feel like a loss, and also this feeling like you can succeed, and your first reaction isn't excitement, it's fear. I would say that was the real kernel, because that was something that I was personally feeling over and over again. And so I think it was centered, or it started with that, the idea of feeling afraid of your success because the fear of what it might cost you, and this fear that you're not able to hold on to both, or as an ambitious woman, you can't really hold on to both, that you will have to sacrifice one or the other. So I think it started there, but it was so tied to male fragility. And this feeling of needing to minimize oneself to protect a relationship. So that was like the real kind of heart of it. And the first scene that I ended up writing for this movie was the scene where she gets promoted. And you see her first reaction isn't excitement, it's fear and not knowing how to tell her male partner. So that, I think that was really like the first seed.
Amazing. Phoebe, when you first talk about your experience of the first time that you read the script.
Yeah, I mean, it was a really memorable experience because I had never read anything that spoke to my soul in the way that the script did, and kind of unleashed a lot of feelings that I didn't even know were in me. But it spoke to so many things in my life and experiences that I'd had, and also friends and women in my life. I felt it on a really deep level, and Emily just felt so complex. There's so many things going on. The Luke character didn't feel one-dimensional at all. Like, these characters were so fully formed, and the script is so layered and complex. And I think that the experience I felt when I read it was like utter fear. Like, how would I take this on, and even where would I begin with this role? And I think that's always like a great start when you read a script. So yeah, from that moment, it was like all guns blazing. I'm gonna try and get this role. And as soon as I spoke to Chloe and we had a conversation about it, and it felt so personal to her, and then it just kind of all happened so quickly. But I'm kind of glad that it did, or else I think I would have had a lot more fear about it.
Was that fear present through shooting?
Oh yeah. I think it was like when we first met. I mean, also we shot this movie in Serbia, so it was like we arrived in Belgrade in January, and it was cold, and it was like the script. This I don't know. There wasn't one day that I wasn't like terrified to film a scene, because there's so much in there. But as soon as we stepped into the rehearsal space, and me and Chloe and Alden all just got to talking about it and rehearsing and diving into the scenes, it just immediately felt safe, like a really safe space that we could explore everything that happens in this film. So I was comforted immediately by Chloe and Alden and the relationship that we formed very quickly.
Alden, I hate to cop out and be like, same question, but what was your what was your experience reading the script? And I also want to say, I think it takes a very secure, brave actor to take this on, and you did a really, really great job. And what was the kind of internal, like, what was your experience of reading the script, and also like what did you kind of feel around saying yes to this?
Yeah, I think when I first read it, you just feel on some intangible level when somebody's writing from a place that feels really personal. There could have been a story that you could have told exactly the same story, and if it wasn't as deeply felt, or it didn't feel like it was coming from somebody's experience or feelings at a real depth level, it could have been an entirely different movie that I might not have wanted to be a part of. But because there was that emotional depth to it, it really drew me in. And I was also really impressed with how it was structured, and also the use of the financial world, and taking an incredibly dense, a whole world that's incredibly detailed and complicated, and using it in a way in the film that I thought was really clear. And you don't follow everything as an audience, and I didn't follow it when I read it. I had to learn about that stuff. But I just thought there were some things that were done really so smartly. And then when I, as far as actually doing it, when I met Chloe, that feeling was really confirmed. Chloe was talking about her nightmares and writing out of a sense of, of fear, and I felt what this story meant to her, and I also felt her sort of grit and resolve around telling it. And so the best experiences I've ever had in my creative life have been situations where I felt confident to sort of surrender myself to the vision of an artist, of a writer, director, or a director, but in this case both. And I just felt that with Chloe, and was even more taken with and impressed by her assuredness and control over the set. And when I saw the film, it was even better, I thought, than the script was. So I felt, when you have that safety net, everything is completely different. You could be doing much easier material with somebody you don't trust, and it would be way harder, if that little math equation makes sense.
Yeah, it definitely does. Chloe, the design of this film is really spectacular. It is this like romantic horror nightmare. And in listening to other interviews, you should listen to all her interviews, they're fucking amazing. You've talked about how the design of the apartment, you had the walls close in and kind of got smaller, and the apartment got smaller and smaller as you were shooting. Talk about kind of just the design and the department heads and how you went about it, both in production and then in post, in finishing, because I think the color is really, really spectacular and the sound is really amazing, and it all kind of like fits in this romantic horror tapestry that you created.
Yeah, I'd say to start with like the sets, I wanted to create two different set pieces that start to feel like this claustrophobic, toxic bubble that they can't really escape. So it was intentional always that these are two workaholics that go from the apartment to the office, back to the apartment to the office, and that there is no escape from each other, which is part of what leads to such a volatile final act. But yeah, so I was looking to try and figure out how to create that feeling of claustrophobia, where you feel like the world is closing in on them in two different kind of looks and feels. So with the apartment, this idea that, and it also started with like the hallway to the apartment. Like when she first gets promoted, she's walking back to the apartment. I wanted like the hallway to the apartment just to feel like, she's walking to the guillotine in a way. And so the feeling of that kind of long confinement, like a prison or something, and just confined by these long hallways. That was my idea for like the apartment building. So then in their actual apartment, I talked to my my production designer, Steve Summergill, who's like amazing. And I said, I would love to be able to have walls that we could bring in. Because also that's the beauty of being on stage, is you can do shit like that, you know? So we did. And it wasn't anything that I ever wanted anyone to notice or get surreal or Charlie Kaufman-esque with it. You know, it was just a way to feel like the world is closing in on them. And whether or not you see it, it was just fun to feel. But yeah, the idea that they're confined by these long hallways and I think was really important to me in that space. And then in the office, this idea that it's a fishbowl and there are no walls and they can't hide from each other, so they're always in each other's sight, was also very important to me. And then the reflections, you know, they can always kind of see each other in the corner of their eye or through the reflection. So yeah, that was pretty much you know, a lot based on the set design. Then in terms of like the sound, I told my sound designers, I said, design this like a horror film. So we used a lot of tropes, but I would spin it a little bit. So like when she comes home and she tells him she's been promoted, I wanted it to be so quiet, like so uncomfortably quiet. But then we added like floor creaks and you know, just little things like that, like using horror tropes. But when he starts to come towards her and she doesn't know how he's going to respond, how he's going to feel, and we just hear the floor creaks in that like deafening silence, like stuff like that helped just really build the tension there. And then I would say with like the city, you know, when we get to more abrupt, abrasive sounds, when shit gets crazy and then that bubble kind of bursts. I told him, I wanted the city to start to feel like an antagonist as much as the characters become to each other. So like the subway, I just wanted the sounds of the subway and the screeches just hurt and become piercing, and to feel like the city is violating them as much as they are violating each other.
That's amazing. You had a rehearsal process. You spent a week / 2 weeks working together. For all three of you, really, were there moments in that rehearsal process that legitimately surprised you? Like, what were those moments when you were in that process with each other that you felt locked in, and also like when did you truly kind of like, especially with the two of you as scene partners, feel like surprised by the other in like an exciting way?
Oh my gosh, I mean, I'd never rehearsed in the way that we rehearsed, but Alden was kind of interesting because he brought these, like, we role played a little bit, and I just remember Alden saying, why don't we role play, I think the first one was like how we first met or something, I think.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay. And then we did it, and it felt like so, I don't know, there's something about it just made it feel so much more real, and we knew where our story started, and I'd never done that before. I haven't worked in theatre either, so I haven't, like, it was so new to me, but I felt very surprised with kind of what came out of that experience and what we learned about each other and our characters, and so that was really fun and exciting.
Yeah, we did the first day in the office and me showing Emily where her desk is going to be and kind of getting to know each other and flirting and this kind of banter. We did the first time we said I love you to each other in the bedroom of the apartment, and that one was very moving because it was very emotional and very intimate, and it was like it was in a way the worst version of doing stuff, as you know. It feels like there's a bunch of words and everybody's trying to figure out how to say these words or something, and so this was giving us this chance to take it off the page and really live in character, but with our own minds, our own instincts, our own words in this way, and kind of make a connection that way. And it created this layer that I think lived underneath all the scenes that came after it, and it also connected all of us as kind of a team in in the same way that if you were at a dinner party and somebody just suddenly opened up about something really personal, just changes the energy in the room, and the whole room feels a little bit differently about each other. In exactly that way, but more extreme. We kind of built that so that when we had to venture into these serious, intense moments, I think there was a much better feeling of trust.
Yeah, and I would say, I think that the rehearsals, it created this bond and trust that by the time we got to shooting, and it was also, we went in, I don't know how anyone can not rehearse. Like, I talked to some directors and they're like, I just walk in on the day and I'm like, that is insane. How do you sleep the night before? I think we're rehearsing I think we rehearsed about 80% of the film. And so we were able to work out all the kinks. We were able to, but really more than that, just really get on the same page and there was an energy there. So that by the time we got on set, like it allowed for that spontaneity and those surprises in a way that I knew how to lean into it. And I was just to talk about like two different moments when each of them like surprised me in the most incredible way was I'd say with Phoebe there was the big breakout fight where she's like, no, Campbell wanted to fire you because you're the one who's weak. That was my favorite. It's my favorite scene to write. It's my favorite scene to shoot, and it's my favorite scene to watch. Because it's the first time like there's all this tension, and it's like you're waiting for her to kind of stand up for herself, and this is the first time they go at it. But I remember when Phoebe got to that level, my favorite thing about it, because it's like I know what I want, but they would always just give me something unexpected that I didn't know or didn't think about, and it just added a level of complexity and humanity to it that was just so electric. But she said that line, and you could tell this was like she was really being pushed to the limit to go to that place, and she said it with such contempt. But as soon as the words came out of her mouth, there was this rush of fear. Like as soon as the last word, like, because you're the one who's weak, it's like weak. And then it's like she knew that she was like her relationship was fucked in that moment. And that was something that she brought. That was just like this unexpected, surprising moment that was just gold. And then with Alden, I remember it was on the couch when they start to kind of come back together and they start to hook up on the couch. And this is halfway through the film. I'd say a little more than halfway through the film. I would say the way, because I think what I said to her when you say you start like she's trying to seduce him and he just wants to slow it down and he needs to slow it down to connect back with her because he feels like he's losing her, feels like he's losing himself. And I said, say I love you, like I don't want to lose you. But the way that he did it, it was so heartbreaking the way he said I love you. But then when he pops back up off the couch, when he can't perform, like what he brought, like that pain in his eyes was just so unexpected. And the way that the camera caught it at that moment, of that unexpected thing that he brought was just like the set had never been quieter than that moment. I remember everyone at the monitor just being like, holy shit.
Talk to me about how you scheduled the film, knowing that it was such what it was.
Well, it's funny, we were talking about today, I was like, when I sat down with my AD, I'm like, okay, so we should start with some light scenes just to, get them into it. Like, we looked at it, we're like, there are no light scenes in this movie. I would say we wanted to definitely start with the two of them, all the stuff that was the two of them, because it's kind of like, it was almost funny when we were filming it, it almost felt like two different movies. There was the movie in the apartment with them, and then there was the movie in the office with everyone. And we shot all the apartment stuff first. So all the intimate stuff when they're early and in love and everything's great and love is possible, and then, but it gets pretty intense really quickly. But we just, and that was really great because that's also how we rehearsed. We rehearsed just the three of us, so we could kind of just go straight into those scenes. And we really got our own rhythm down so that by the time we brought in more people, we felt like there was, more stability there. But yeah, by the time we got in the office, but it was also fun because it was like very, very intimate with the three of us. And we got in the office, it was like, oh, there was Eddie, and and all these different actors, and then all background. So it felt like a different beast. But that's basically how we broke it up.
And you shot the apartment chronologically, ish.
As much as we could. Yeah, as much as we could. We started like early on with the scenes, the shower scenes, and went on the floor. I think, the first scene we shot was
Engagement.
yeah,
Right?
the engagement on the floor when they wake up and they're
right.
drunk. Yeah. And then we shot them dancing, slow dancing in the shower scene. And that's when I knew I had a movie, by the way. It was the way that they looked at each other in that moment, slow dancing in the shower. And it's just like chemistry, it's either there or it's not. Like, you can do things to build it up, but and I definitely think our rehearsal period allowed for that, but it was like, just, there was that one take that was just absolute magic in the way they looked at each other, and I knew that I had a movie.
Was there a moment for both of you when you kind of were like, oh fuck, this is gonna be good?
Maybe when we first took our masks off. Like, there was like a period of us just being like, and touch this part of the body. No, it was, I think probably the rehearsal period, honestly. There was like a moment where it was just so, I just remember being like, this is what I came into the movie business for, like, because it just felt so free and fun and exciting. But then I'm trying to think of, I think maybe the shower scene actually for me too. I think there was something there's also something really freeing about being in a shower, like running water when you're an actor and there's cameras there, because it's like very strange. So if you can kind of ignore the rest of it, I think there was a moment where we were filming the scene and it literally just felt like it was me and Alden there.
Right.
And Chloe, weirdly, also, like, just right next to the shower. You guys good?
Yeah.
Well, actually, just to say that, I remember you guys, because you couldn't really hear us with the running water, and I remember that was the opening dolly take, and you guys were just giggling, and you kept like moving around in a way, and right when the camera would come to you, like, you were like having too much fun in there, and it actually kept messing up the tape in a way that I was like, you guys, can you hear us? And you couldn't hear us because you were just in it, but it was amazing. Yeah, you guys were just like giggling like two little kids in there, and we were trying to get the shot.
I also remember like really holding on to the moments, like, because I think all our like nice
Right.
stuff
Yeah.
was up first.
Yeah.
And then there was one scene where I was like, this is our last nice scene. The rest of it is just, it's all downhill from here.
Right.
I remember that being a really fearful moment. I was like, oh, this is, it's just brutal now, from now on.
What discoveries did you make in, like, you write a script, you're by yourself, then you're in production, you make discoveries. What discoveries did you make there? And then what discoveries did you make in the edit?
It's a great question. Empathy for Luke. No, but seriously, I think the first few drafts that I wrote from a place of anger and pain and shame, and then the more that I kind of really put myself in his shoes, I allowed myself to empathize with him, even if I didn't like him, and I think that allowed me. I thought that's the more interesting version of the film, and seeing that he's this is a man in pain, and he's struggling with stuff he doesn't want to be struggling with, but he is, and he doesn't know how to deal with that pain and that insecurity, and so it starts to come out in poisonous ways. And just really thinking about that, and thinking about his character, and what I really tried to do with this movie, and then I put in the later drafts of the script, and then Alden just took to another level, was just this idea that it's not his fault for having these feelings, right? Those feelings are not his fault. This is a societal, systemic problem that raises boys to believe, that success is a zero-sum game, that masculinity means one thing, that men are supposed to achieve and be the breadwinners and all these things. And so you know, if that's how you're raised and that's how you're wired, and then, you know, you grow up and those things aren't amounting, you know, it's like, I can understand why he's feeling that way. What he does with those feelings are not okay, you know, and that's where the cautionary tale kind of comes. How he weaponizes his pain and his insecurity against her is not okay. But, you know, I tried to basically say, like, okay, if I can kind of be in his shoes and understand what it is to that feeling that if all your self-worth is on achieving this one thing and you don't get it, like, it's crushing. And I can understand what that feels like, you know. So I really tried to lean into that in moments and to show that struggle between wanting to support someone, wanting to love them, but also this feeling of needing to get there first, and the struggle between those two things. Like, that is really the heart of where I think the friction and the tension lies in the workplace and behind bedroom doors. And so that's really what I wanted to sink my teeth into. But I thought, I would say, that was really the discovery, was just realizing that is the more interesting version of the film. And there's another, you know, version of the film where I could have villainized him, you know, and I could have also made her just more of a stereotypical victim. And I wasn't interested in doing that. I think because it's a lot more complex. And you know, even with Emily's character too, I wanted to show that how women are forced to play ugly to survive. And there's also a version of the film where it could have just ended when, you know, where she is the victim and that's it. And I was like, well, that's not interesting to me either. You know, it was interesting to end on her reclaiming the power. So I would say in terms of the edit, then I leaned into that even more. So there was definitely, it's crazy actually with this movie. When we got into the edit, you dial one scene a little bit more in his favor, it actually makes you hate her. You dial the scene a little bit more in her favor, it makes you like it had to be just right with looks and comments and all of that. It was really wild actually. But in the edit, I leaned more towards him than I had in the script.
Alden, what was your process in creating Luke? Because he is not a villain. Like, there is a version of this movie where he just feels like a villain, and he really feels so nuanced, and just you find yourself feeling for both of them in ways that I didn't expect to feel. So what was that process and kind of like living inside of him?
Yeah, I think it's kind of doing, you know, when you're inside of it, you have to exercise judgment for any character that you play, despite what they are doing, and try to, you know, do the things that you can to get connected to them. And I thought that there was because the structure of the film was really strong, there was a lot of opportunity to explore a lot of different colors, and also because Chloe had written it with this felt kind of feelable ambivalence in certain moments. You know, like the scene where she comes in drunk, for instance. So I found that. So yeah, it starts with the script, and then I just thought, you know, yeah, that's a terrible answer.
I think it was great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thank